about, getting through the regulatory in the HTA system in the next few years, it's our new Alzheimer's drugs. So we said, okay, we'll take that, and let's see if we can work through, sit down with a group of payers, have some regulators in the room and say, can we look at the regulatory guidance on Alzheimer's trial design, and can we, kind of explain what the payers want that might differ from that, and if so, why do they want it if it differs, and how might you go about addressing that in your trials and your marketing. So some really quite useful things came out of those discussions in the forum. I'm going to skip that slide on relative effectiveness and move on to HTA and disinvestment, because there's one or two resonances here, very interestingly, on some things that were discussed throughout the course of today, actually. So let me just pick some of those up in the context of the forum discussion. The forum, kind of noticed that, well, the first thing I should say was that the forum discussed this last year, well, this year, February this year. Where are we? November, yeah, February this year. And I was disappointed, personally, because I thought we should be discussing HTA and value, because I thought this is obviously the most important thing to talk about in the world, HTA and value. How do you define value and what to talk about? The forum chose, democratically, to discuss HTA and disinvestment. And goodness me, it was a very interesting discussion, and I was wrong. What was interesting was that at this time last year, when this decision was being made, the forum thought, and this was a mix of industry and public sector payers, it was more, they would rather talk about HTA and disinvestment than they would talk about HTA and value, which I think shows you how high up the scale disinvestment has come in the kind of current financial environment around the world. So the fact that we talked about it was interesting. We agreed that it was key to affordable high-quality healthcare. We also agreed it was an extremely unhelpful word. And that we should all ban the use of the word disinvestment. The problem with the word disinvestment is that it implies you're getting rid of something altogether, and it implies you're pocketing the money. And actually, the reality is you're kind of adapting the use of things to an optimal level, and you're hopefully recycling the money into reinvestment. So disinvestment is a disaster word, basically, and it's a political disaster, that word, and we should stop using it. We should talk about assessment and reassessment, decisions on optimization, and implementation of those decisions. Problem is, it doesn't quite trip off the tongue in the same way. So, if anyone can come up with a single word that's better than disinvestment, then you've won the prize. We noticed that there were two approaches to this. One is, what you might expect a responsible healthcare system to do, which is to think, we're always under cost pressures. There's always useful, interesting new things coming at us which cost money. We therefore need a consistent and planned approach to identifying the things that are less good value and disinvesting in them. That's what we call the planned ongoing review cycle. And then there's the reality of what happens, which is, oh my goodness, we're £1 million short this year. What are we going to stop doing? Help. And that's what we call the ad hoc response. And in practice, both things tend to happen at once. But of course, it's much easier to build HTA and systematic analysis into a planned review than it is to the, oh my God, the minister's told me to lose £1 million by next week, what do I do? Not a lot of HTA you can do in the ensuing 5 days, although actually there is still some. So a few observations about disinvestment and HTA's role in it. It was felt that we need to look quite carefully for the things to analyse and disinvest in. A lot of people have entered the field of disinvestment imagining that it was full of trees with low-hanging fruit. Oh yes, talk to a lot of doctors in the washroom. They'll say, oh, we do loads of stuff that's a waste of money. But then when you get them out of the washroom and you sit them in a committee and say, okay, could you just tell us what those are, please? They go very quiet. So most people's experience in HTA and in disinvestment is there's very little low-hanging fruit, despite what lots of people say about, oh, we all know there's lots of waste in the healthcare system. It's very difficult to disinvest because of a number of factors. There is a kind of loss aversion. Apparently, you economists know this very well. Someone won the Nobel Prize for this, apparently, which basically tells us the well-known bit of common sense that it's harder to take something away from someone than it is not to give them it in the first place. Anyone who has ever managed children knows that very well. Once they've got the toy, you can't get it back. Or dogs and balls, it's the same thing. So basically, And then there's an inertia in the system. Once the system is set up to do something, it's got the equipment, it's got the infrastructure, it trains people. It's very difficult just to stop it all. So the paradox of disinvestment, as we called it at the meeting, is to remove something, you need better evidence than you do to introduce it or withhold it in the first place. But the paradox is it's harder to get good evidence once something's in routine use, because you can't do trials, you can't get funding for the trials, and the routine data systems you therefore rely on in those systems are in most health systems deficient, should we say. I was going to use a ruder word. So there's a paradox in disinvestment. You need better evidence and you can't get it. The conclusion from all that is that you don't stand a chance in disinvestment if you don't bring your clinicians and your patients with you. If you're fighting the clinicians and the patients, you will never win, because you will never get the good evidence, basically. So the answer is work with the clinicians and the patients, work through it with them, get them to identify the potential candidates and agree what constitutes good evidence. So our conclusions were that all health systems should do this and they should have a systematic approach. HTA methods can be central to helping with disinvestment. It should be seen as part of promoting safety and quality and not just efficiency. Some of these outmoded technologies are actually low quality. You know, it is not what a quality healthcare system should be doing, persisting in delivering things that are out of date or have got better alternatives. So the argument is not just a value for money one, it's a safety and quality one as well. And the final thought